Hey, how's it going, guys? My name is John Park, and welcome to another design tutorial series. For today's lesson, we're actually going to be taking an existing object and redesigning it. So let's get started. Alright, so basically for today's object, I actually decided to choose something that was fairly common and actually existing in today's kind of society, or something that's very recognizable or familiar, which is a gas station. Now you guys might be wondering, like, what the hell is this? Like, why would you choose a gas station? Well, what I'd like to propose to you guys today is actually redesigning a gas station. And now it can be a gas station, it can be a building, it can be a vehicle, it can be some sort of statue, anything of your choice. It can be a character or creature. But for today's lesson, I'm actually going to choose a gas station. So my goal is I'm actually going to convert this gas station into a Western theme. And that's going to be the design challenge for today. So there's a couple of things that I want to focus on. Is we want to understand the object or subject matter. Number two is we're going to then understand our theme through research. And number three, we're going to draw it out using only the line tool or the drawing tool. So you guys have an option of doing this traditionally as well, as I mentioned in my in the previous tutorial. This is not something that's mandatory for Photoshop. However, Photoshop does allows us to basically kind of arrange the reference in a much more easier manner. So, all right, well, what we're going to do is we're going to go with step one, is understanding the object, understanding the subject matter, right? So let's go ahead and do that first. Before any of you guys ever get started with drawing, painting, or whatever it is, you always want to do your warm-ups, right? Just like when you go on a run or you work out, you want to stretch and get your body or your muscles warmed up. So that's exactly what I'm going to do here. This is just my warm-up phase. And I just want to kind of get my lines and kind of the flowiness going, you know? Just really want to kind of, even though this is digital, and even though you guys might be working on a Cintiq or a Wacom tablet, it's kind of the same thing where, you know, you really want to get your eye and hand coordination going. So I usually do a couple of things for warm-ups. It varies from doing straights and curves. Whatever. And curves. So we have straights and curves. So straights, I like to typically pick two dots and just try to match it. Now I know on a computer it's kind of a cheat, because then you can technically do Control Shift and you can get the straight line. That's something that, yes, it is an option. We can do that. However, this is just purely to kind of exercise our accuracy and our eye and hand coordination. That's the only thing. Okay, but yes, we can easily just click and hold Shift and it'll make a straight line, right? But again, for warm-up sakes, you know, I don't want to cheat myself, and I just kind of want to do these little exercises before we get into the drawing. Curves. Curves is kind of like this, like, kind of strange, like inverted S that I like to do, and I like to just kind of do one line and just copy it. It's okay if you go whoa, you know, it's all right if you do that. The whole goal here is not to do a pretty drawing, it's just to kind of warm up, and it doesn't matter because this stuff we're not going to really show in our portfolio or have in our having our professional workbook. This is something just for you to do before get into the actual drawing. Alright, now that we're all warmed up and we're ready to go, now we can actually start the drawing. Okay, so these are straights and curves, okay? So be sure to do about, 5 to 10 minutes of this stuff, just kind of warm yourself up. Again, if it helps, do this on paper. It's probably the most effective to do it on paper as opposed to digital. Digital tends to kind of act a little strange, but give this a shot. Okay, cool. Let's get started with our object. So we're going to start off with the gas station reference. A couple of things that I do want to note is understanding kind of the basic design. At this point, I'm not too concerned about perspective or anything like that. This is going to be purely design based. So when I look at this, I'm going to want to just actually do a rough drawing that kind of analyzes the basic design, and just to kind of get the base perspective of this going, I'm going to go ahead and just use the angle here. Now since this is on computer, we have the option of actually using this to our advantage. Figuring out the basic perspective and basic geometry of some of this stuff, and then the rest, we'll draw in. But since this is more of a design exercise, I'm not too worried about this whole concept of ooh, I'm cheating. This is just, it's all about the idea at this point. Just realized I did this all on the wrong layer. Awesome. Alright, let's do this again. So basically I have a new layer on top, and I'm drawing with the 1 pixel line, and it's just to kind of get the basic geometry, just the shape. So that's kind of what I always like to establish when we draw, is just the basic shape. And of course in this case it's kind of like we used the existing photograph, but that's more or less kind of what I want you guys to start off with, and then from here we can actually do the drawing, do the study. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, if it helps, perspective lines, we can identify that the horizon line is here. Now the way I figured that out is basically if we take all these lines that are converging, right? Let's say I take like one large line here, large red line, and I know sometimes finding the perspective on a photograph can be tricky, right? If we don't have an obvious horizon line or obvious vanishing point. But what I like to do is just kind of match up all of the lines here on the actual building, and just kind of see where the lines intersect, right? That's the easiest way to figure out where your vanishing point is just kind of see where the lines intersect. And you'll notice by doing 2 or 3, you'll start to find the true vanishing point. Just by getting all these lines right in. We'll do the other side as well. And it's probably most likely going to be off the page. I can already tell. Just because this is definitely, it's converging at a much more further distance on the horizon. So we know that most of our lines are going to look something like this. And this is kind of just a really, really rough kind of indication of like, where is our vanishing point, right? And so if I dial this down, or we kind of lower the opacity, I know for a fact that my vanishing point is here. Okay, so I know some of this stuff is a repeat for you guys, and some of it might be new, but this is something that generally helps figure out your basic perspective so that we can actually do the construction of our drawing. Alright, so I have this. I have a vanishing point. I have my guidelines here. Let's just go ahead and lock this down. And I have my drawing. So what I'm going to do is, let's go ahead and, I'm just going to go ahead and draw in a new layer. Okay, and for those of you who don't know, I'm actually using a hard brush set at 70% opacity. And I draw anywhere from like 1 to 3 pixels, okay? And now that's just the drawing. I generally just draw with 1 to 3 pixels. Let's go ahead and do this. Let's actually draw on the actual geometry. But just for the sake of the demo, I'm going to go ahead and just duplicate it. So we have a copy. And then now I'm just going to go ahead and just draw this stuff out. Now, I don't want to kill myself with the drawing. This is just a rough study so that we can kind of understand the basis of our object. And also just kind of the general structure of things. You know, placement of detail, columns, and stuff like that. You know, if we have like a sign, like a Texaco sign, we can add that stuff. We can add all those details in later. But for the most part, I just want to just do the quick copy. And roughly the little Texaco gas station symbols up here with a little graphic that's kind of like fading in perspective. And we got the inside of this thing, so I'm gonna go ahead and draw that out, kind of the inside structure of our rooftop here. I know this stuff seems really boring. You guys might be wondering, like, why are we drawing a gas station? Come on, man. I know, but that's the challenge. And you know what? Realistically, when it comes to doing professional concept work or doing stuff for video games or film, like a lot of times they're gonna ask you to do a lot of mundane kind of things, or things that seem not as, you know, super fictional or super cool. You know, our job is to make it cool, right? So that's kind of the goal here today. These windows at. Okay. And then I'm going to draw the footprint of this ground that it's sitting on. Again, just using the using the horizon, the vanishing points to kind of determine the angle of this ground is so useful, so helpful, right? It just gives me a nice indication of where these lines are supposed to be. Now again, if you're doing this traditionally, marking down the perspective lines using a light pencil or a marker will be more than useful, will be more than helpful. I'm gonna edit this real quick. It looks like the actual ground comes up a little further, like right around here, and then it vanishes. Drawing these little cylinder blocks here. Okay, we got some sort of indication of one of the gas stalls here. It's kind of this like very rectangular kind of structure, right? And there's all this kind of like stuff way back here that looks like boxes to me, and I'm probably mistaking a lot of the details for trash cans and stuff like that that's back there, but I know for a fact that this little gas stall is composed of a bunch of like boxes. So we're just gonna go ahead and just indicate that form. Okay, I'm gonna get in these horizontal lines that we kind of see here, and that stuff, what's funny is that it actually helps you know, put our design in perspective even more so. Like the smallest little little detail just help indicate and reinforce the perspective in which we see our drawings, even though it's kind of like just lines, you know. Alright, now we're gonna actually draw out our little stalls here, these little gas stations. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and draw a line out from our perspective vanishing lines. I'm going to go ahead and actually create a new layer just so I can show you guys how I'm plotting this out. And I'm just stretching out these lines here from this point just so that I can use it as a rough guideline, and you can see that this is kind of the guideline here, right? And using that, I'm going to then figure out kind of the angle that this is actually set at. So I know that for a fact that we have a base here, and that base is also vanishing. So that's kind of the curve that I'm looking at down here. Again, this side is probably vanishing really far off, so it's not going to look as extreme. Okay, and we got kind of the general thickness of this curve. It's going to look something like that. Okay, and then I'm actually going to go ahead and indicate this gas stall in very simple boxes, so you guys can kind of see how I'm simplifying the overall shape. And I'm just using the guidelines to kind of help me draw out the basic forms. Right? It's a box with another box, with another box here, with another rectangular box-like shape at the top. Okay, with two very obvious kind of poles here. So that's kind of what I'm going to mark in. Okay, and also there's another pole here that's actually connecting up at this structure. kind of show off the little curvature of that base here. It looks like it's kind of rounding off, so that's kind of the reason why I drew in like a little bit of a curve. But if you want it more squared, then just go ahead and just square it off. Okay, there's a little bit of space here in between these two cement curb structures here, and I'm gonna go ahead and just draw on that. With these little poles. Now these poles are obviously for safety issues. I think so that dumb drivers don't, you know, drive through and completely ram into the this midsection here, or into other cars, or into the actual columns here. So I think that's what these little things are for, and these little poles here to kind of prevent cars from running to it. But I definitely want to you know, mark that into our redesign, because even though we're doing a Western theme, I want to have a lot of the same elements that are represented here. So definitely want to mark all this stuff down. Okay, so we got our other gas station. Draw the box. You can tell like the line's gonna do something like that. I'm gonna draw the mid section of this box. Okay, and then the top section. So something like that. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and duplicate this so you guys can see. This is kind of what we added in. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and just kind of erase out some of the lines, some of the vanishing lines here, so that we don't get too distracted or it doesn't throw us off. Just a heads up, I know a lot of times when we're doing drawings in perspective, you know, these guidelines can be a huge mind boggle, dude. Like, we call it a total, it's just like mentally can confuse you. There's so much stuff going on. There's all these lines, and it's like looking into the Matrix. But that's the thing, though. It's like, you know, you only want a few lines that's gonna help you out. I try to avoid creating an entire series of vanishing lines, just to kind of, you know, keep my sanity, and I don't get like overly, you know, too overwhelmed by all the lines. But that's something that I would just, you know, just caution you guys, is that, you know, this stuff can get really complex really quickly. So try to take this at a step at a time, you know, so that we can get through this first part of the assignment. Okay, a lot of times these studies, you know, usually I try to spend at least a few hours to a full day just trying to get this study down, you know, because this is stuff that's like you realistically only have to do maybe once, or, you know, once for this project, or maybe a couple times, but it's not something that you're gonna have to always do every single time you draw, you know. So it's definitely worth kind of like spending the time, because you learn a lot in the process. Just kind of freehanding that circle here. Now, for those of you who don't know the basics of drawing, be sure to check out our dynamic sketching videos with Daniel Park. He does a fantastic job of kind of analyzing and breaking down a lot of the drawing principles, you know, especially for things like perspective and also understanding line weight and things like that. So be sure to check out his that section of the tutorials. It's on the Foundation Gumroad, or email us directly. Stars are so damn hard to draw. I don't know why. It's like the hardest thing in the world. Just gonna go ahead and thicken this up just a little bit. For the most part, it's kind of generally there. It's not like, again, it's an observational study, so it's like I'm trying to get all the major design elements. There's some slight proportion things that are slightly different from what I have and what's in the photograph, but you know, it doesn't bug me too much. We got these little, there's like these little vertical lines here. It's gonna just lightly indicate. Just as a texture, you know. Kind of always helps differentiate, like, you know, what is the actual building texture versus kind of a sign or a window. We got like the patterns on the star, but we'll just leave that simple for now. And we got all this detail here, like on the actual, on the gas pump. And all this detail here is something that I'm going to just kind of indicate. You know, there's all these like levers and things like that that's so far away that we're probably not gonna, I definitely don't want to obsess over the small tiny things. If we're gonna obsess over anything, you know, I'll definitely do it in our final drawing, but for study, let's just try to get the general placement of things. You know, if the image was bigger, then I would actually you know, take the opportunity to study those things, but for this quick little demo and exercise, I don't want to bore anyone with that. So let's just keep it simple. All right, we got some of that. It's interesting. I always thought there'd be like trash cans here. This must be a relatively clean Texaco. There's usually like trash cans because people don't want, you know, other people to throw their trash away by the gas stations. Now you're going to look at gas stations in a different way after this assignment. You're going to be like, dude, look at all these details. It's like the most nerdiest thing. Like, I find myself getting too fanatical or like way too excited about seeing like details that every other, you know, everyone that we see every day, you know, it's like no big deal, but it's like because we're all artists, we kind of have this a different visual appreciation of things, you know, because it's all reference. The entire, our environment is our reference, you know, just the way we look at things is different. Okay, and then we got the sign. Now that sign is a pain in the ass to draw because, again, there's a certain font and spacing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cheat a little bit. And I'm going to go ahead and just copy this. so we can get the placement in. Because if there's anything that's hard to draw, it's fonts, man. Anything with words, I don't like. Alright, let's get the E in. Boom. But when people ask you, just be like, yeah, I drew the shit. You know? It's practicing your eye and hand coordination. Alright, so let's get this in. And again, please, I would like everyone, I just like to remind everyone that, you know, even though I'm doing the demo relatively quickly, don't feel obligated to rush through your assignments. Just because, you know, the demo is done within a span of, you know, this is, so far I've been spending about 30 minutes on this. Don't feel obligated to do your own personal drawings or the homework assignment in a matter of 30 minutes, because, you know, this is just to kind of show you guys, but we definitely want you guys to kind of spend some quality time on your demos and your studies. Okay, Taxico, there we go. Done. Bring this guy over. Enlarge. Put it into our drawing. Done and done. Alright, let's go ahead and round this top off a little bit. Does something like that. Go ahead and erase this excess stuff. I think this section here rounds off just a little bit, so I'm going to go ahead and round that off. And the bottom here. Alright. Well, there you have it. Our little gas station study. Yeah, pretty quick, right? Pretty simple. It's not the most like overly complex drawing. But there you go. There you have it. Now we're going to move on to our second step. And so the second step is we're going to take this exact footprint and we're going to westernize it. Now for you guys don't have to pick the exact same object as I do in the demo, but just keep in mind, do a good drawing, understand all the components, and then we're going to redesign it. So if we really look at all the stuff we have here, you can identify all these things, right? We have a roof or a top, right? We have the merchant building. Store building. And we got these gas stalls, right? Or gas pumps. So by identifying these major elements, we're able to keep in mind what we need to redesign and what we need to keep for our Western theme. Okay, so let's go ahead and just enlarge this a little bit. All right, well, let's get started on that. All right, so let's go ahead and pull our Western reference here. I'm gonna move this drawing off to the side. Let's go ahead and duplicate this guy, and we're actually gonna draw directly on top of this here. I'm gonna go ahead and erase out these lines because we don't need them. And here's our Western reference. All right, so let's just take a look at this stuff, because man, there's so much crap in here that's freaking awesome. You know, there's like just all the architectural details, and I'm gonna refer to this as much as I can. I mean, wood planks and all this stuff. I mean, this is something that anytime I have a question like, what does a roof look like? Well, that's what it's gonna look like. Or this right here, it's gonna be some sort of large wooden overhang. And this little building, it's gonna look something like that, right? With little signs that are made of made of wood and paint. Columns. We got these large columns. What is that gonna look like? Well, it's either probably gonna look like a big 2x or whatever this is, like a 6x6 post, or we can have like these little tiny columns here, or these large logs. So it just depends on like what we want to pick and pull from it. But I know for a fact that I'm gonna have this reference open on the side while we're drawing. So let's go ahead and do that. Alright, so what I'm gonna do here is, since we duplicated the drawing, we could do a couple things. We can actually draw directly on top of this by lowering the opacity and using it as an underlay, or we can draw and erase away. But I think for the sake of this, I'm actually gonna lower the opacity and just do a completely brand new drawing on top of this, but using just kind of the perspective and guides and just the overall placement of things, because this is a relatively different design. Alright, so let's go ahead and start with the easiest thing, and for me the easiest is actually this rooftop, because it's a simple big square, and I think I'm gonna go for something that's more along the lines of this kind of scaffolding like structure here. And let's go ahead and just kind of block in just some basic shapes. We'll do something like that. Okay. And periodically, keep in mind, guys, if you need to change something, or if you need to test out a design, just do it on the side. And I'm sure you guys are wondering, like, what does that mean? And I'll show you in a bit. But basically, what I always like to do is, I always like to kind of do a little quick study on the side before committing to something. And it generally helps. It definitely helps. And look at the structure, just the way it's kind of stacked. And it says a lot about kind of the way this thing is constructed. So maybe, just maybe, what if I did something like this? Take these little columns that we drew out. Oh, it's not liking that. Actually, it's not even quite liking this, so I'll probably have to do this manually. But I'm gonna just go ahead and space out these little columns here, or these, not columns, but these little posts up on the top. And what I want to do is I definitely want to identify just kind of where it ends here, right? The end of this, so that we can properly measure it out. 3, 4, and 5. Okay, so that way when I draw our lines, we can just do something like this. It kind of still falls in that perspective, but also just kind of the overall gesture. Okay, we got that. Go ahead and erase out the areas where we don't need it. Okay, and I definitely got sort of a structure up on top here. This is like building a house, man. The more I look at this, I'm like, oh gosh, we're straight up reverse engineering all this and building a house. I don't know if this is like the best idea. Alright, so let's create a new layer just so I can just simplify the way I go about drawing this out. So I can just kind of erase away these lines. You can have something like that. Okay. I'm gonna do the same back here. Just go ahead and indicate that kind of line back there. And also for the sign, what if we actually did some sort of like a wooden cutout? That might be really cool, right? So for this, I'm gonna go ahead and just kind of put in some reinforcement here. Because again, everything's made out of wood. So imagine there's gonna be some sort of like wood structure up here, and it's just kind of hanging from the back. So I'm thinking it might be kind of this like, welcome to Texaco symbol here. That's awesome. The graphics back in the Western times are so awesome. There's like a cheesiness to it that just works. Just gonna draw another post here. And they probably can't really afford like that many signs, so I'm gonna be very frugal about where I put all these little details. So frugal in the sense that, like, you know, probably gonna make like maybe 1 or 2 signs at most. Kind of like the fact that it's a little bit more simple. That the sign can be a lot more simplified like this, instead of all this extra stuff. Seems like it would have been really hard for them to cut out circles back in the day. So let's just go ahead and simplify that. And I just think aesthetically, it just it kind of gives off the more the Western feel, because I feel like anything very complex and rounded can look, you know, very modern, I guess. And that's something to keep in mind when it comes to the design is, you know, if we look at Western, everything's very like rectilinear. It's like kind of built in a very pilgrimy kind of way. Alright, let's go ahead and draw out these lines here. Now, it's this scaffolding, it's this structure that's going to be kind of the most painful part, but it's the stuff that's going to make our drawings look really, really good. So this is what I'm doing here. I'm marking down kind of the general placement of this so that I can actually draw and erase away. But instead of me kind of duplicating, which I easily could, I can get this and just kind of duplicate it and put this little dot here in the vanishing point. I think it's around here, and just kind of converge it down. It's a relatively easier way to kind of you know, block this stuff out. You see how that works? But I don't want to get too technical with kind of how we can make shortcuts, so I'm actually gonna go ahead and just kind of do this more manually. We're just kind of eyeballing our design and eyeballing all the elements here, because again, if we didn't have these tools in Photoshop, you know, we'd have to do these traditionally. So I definitely want us to kind of get used to the idea of drawing this stuff out by hand. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just draw out the rest of these lines here. And I'm just going to eyeball it. Okay, that's in that kind of relative perspective, more or less. I'm going to go ahead and erase away at the base of these columns, because I just kind of want the perception of there being like this under structure. Alright? That's kind of what I'm going for. So now we kind of get that perception of like, holy shit, there's a lot of planks of wood on top. That's kind of like the idea that I want here. Let's go ahead and compress that. Let's get rid of some of these lines here. Be sure to save, guys. Or if you're drawing traditionally, don't worry about it, because the paper ain't going nowhere. Or don't let your dog or your babies eat it. I think that's kind of the general height, okay, for this post here. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and draw out this other sign here. Just gonna go ahead and clean up some of this stuff here. I'm actually going to draw a little line here so that I can actually get a little bit of that angle, that construction angle here, of like where they would actually put that plank of wood to hold this thing up, to hold the sign up, you know. And the reason why they would hold the sign up is because, well, one, it probably gets windy as hell in the west. Two, there's tornadoes. No, just kidding. I don't know if there's tornadoes or not, but I mean, realistically, if they're holding up a sign, they're probably gonna have this kind of plank of wood lodged up like this. Oh man, it's starting to look like we're building a house. Like more I look at this, I'm like, holy shit, this is weird. Um, all right, so let's do some of this stuff here. For our actual main building here, I think it might be more appropriate if we went with something like this. This is pretty cool. So let's go ahead and copy this over so I can actually reference this much closer as we're drawing this, since the screen is relatively wide. I'm just gonna bring this in closer. So I have the main sign here, and it's still, you know, the building's still relatively a box, but I definitely like the way these stagger. This is pretty cool. And also kind of how there's like a roof here. Even though there's like a large roof on our structure here, what if there is a little mini roof-like form? You have like sheets of metal here. That they would lay on top. And then there's just like this little roof detail that I really like. Kind of the staggering. This kind of like as it staggers down. It feels so like primitive, just in the way they have like kind of these facades. It's really cool. But again, like there's all these posts that are here, and kind of this wood deck, right? It's going to be very similar to what we have here, but this time it's going to be a wood deck, and I'm going to connect it all the way out to these posts. There's all this detail too, where we're seeing kind of like barrels and stuff like that. I'm gonna save that for the end because that's kind of like the icing on the cake. Man, can you imagine if they had gas stations back in the day? Like in the Western times, even though like they didn't have automobiles, like what it would look like? And that's a cool thing, is like, you know, just reimagining all these spaces. You know, what would it look like if they had, you know, freeways during this time? You know, built, being limited, and having only the parts that we have access to right now. No crazy machinery or anything like that. What would it look like, you know? I'm gonna do a much more shallow little overhang here. Just clean this up. This part's a little sloppy. Squiggle. You know what's interesting about like these little details of like these metal sheets? Like, where the hell did they where did they manufacture these? Like, where did they actually get these? These are so, it's such a recognizable piece, but like, where did it come from? You know, did they have this back in like the olden, you know, the West? Or did they just have like planks of wood on top? Because I'm seeing it here, but again, this has probably been, it's probably been, you know, modernized. I'm not necessarily seeing it in this picture here. This seems a little bit more accurate, but it's just one of those things where like when we see these details, we kind of like question like, well, would they have it back then, or where did it come from? So actually, you know, to be on the safe side, let's just make these wood planks instead, because as I'm drawing it kind of feels like a little oddly modern, like we're redesigning a theme park set or something. Let's put in some lines here. Okay, some windows. Alright, we can't forget our windows, and I'm just going to make them a little bit larger than what we had in our original. And just actually make this a bit more of an open window concept. It seems like there's like really large windows, right? Like all these Western buildings have really large window structures. And there's something really cool about just reimagining this space, because there's like you kind of get really into the history of like the architecture and where it came from and why it looks the way it looks, you know. Let's put the door here, actually. The swinging door. But it looks like if we look closely, they do have windows here. right? There's actual framing around that. Let's go ahead and add that in. You know, it seems like small details like this doesn't go a long way, but man, it goes a long way, guys. I'll tell you that. Like, there's something about just being attentive to detail gives your drawing so much more depth. You know, it's not just like a quick speed painting or like a gesture. You know, it fairly resembles a very accurate kind of design. And you know, if anything, a lot of companies, a lot of directors and art directors really love this kind of attention to detail, because it's stuff that they're gonna want to really focus and build on, you know. So whatever you design, make sure it's relatively clear. And I'll tell you guys this, I've never drawn anything Western before, so this is the first time I'm doing this too, so do not feel bad. You know, even if you're struggling, it's all good. You know, let's struggle and learn at the same time together. Because even I'm like, damn it, why can't I just draw robots or something? It'd be so much easier. Oh my gosh, just realized there's like well, I guess we can have a little stable or something out here, but maybe something for the horses. It seems like a cheesy detail, you know, we're like, dude, who cares? But actually this stuff, it's pretty cool when you start getting into it. Woo! Alright, we're like 40% done, I think. I hope. I really do hope we're 40% done. Okay, so we got this sign here. As I was looking, I was like, you know, alright, maybe they were able to build a larger sign, so I'm just gonna go ahead and just make this a footprint and go all the way across and just do something like that. You know, this is a fairly large gas station, so you know, I definitely want to give it that same impression. Like, okay, if they had the ability to really build a structure as big as this in the West, they're probably going to use a shit ton of wood, a lot of structures, a lot of wood paneling. So they'll probably do something like that. Oh, let's see what a Western outhouse looks like. Western outhouse? Is it outhouse? I might be off. Yeah, there we go. Yes. The reason why I want to look up an outhouse, you guys are probably wondering, like, what the hell is that? It's a bathroom. And gas stations, this is probably the bathroom, right? But no, we're going to have an outhouse. Some stinky old wooden box. Just nasty. Ugh. Can you just imagine? Nah, we're gonna make it smaller. Screw that. So gross. But that's the way it was back then, you know? It's the way they built stuff. With that little moon cut out for the door. Pretty gnarly. Put a water little thing where horses can drink from, and also where you can wash your hands, because I'm pretty sure they don't have a washing, you know, a station inside, or a sink. I'm pretty sure I don't think so. Nothing like that. That's insane if they did. I'd actually be very impressed. So we're gonna assume that it doesn't have that, and maybe some hay, you know, to wipe off. And also for the horses to eat. It's like we're literally saying, hey, yeah, we're gonna put hay here so that you can wipe your business, and also for the horses to eat afterwards too. That's awesome. That's super sanitary. All right, so we got these doors, right? Kind of the classic Western type of doors, and that's kind of what I'm seeing here. This little door detail. And again, the way I'm drawing this is I'm actually gonna try to draw a lot of these shapes, these details. That might even get covered, because I don't know if this is going to show through, or if we're going to see pieces of this, but I definitely want to indicate all of this detail. Draw the inside or something. There's probably something in there. There's like little cool benches and stuff like that. That's neat. Let me grab this. This is something to kind of refer to in our drawing. And if you want, I always kind of do this too, is just kind of place it in there as a little detail. Again, this is a bit of a cheat, but just so for you guys, if you are interested in how to cheat, I'm just kidding. This is something that I, you know, if I'm doing this in Photoshop and we just want to try to get some things, you know, placed in for design, and not have to worry about the drawing aspect, then I'll actually use the photo reference. I'll actually kind of place this in. Very much like how, you know, you see some artists use photos for painting. You know, this time we're using a drawing. Use photos for drawing. And this is actually a fairly common, a common technique that was even used like way before, like during like the 19th century or the 20th century. Yeah, especially illustrators back in the day used to use this technique fairly often. There you go. We have a bench, right? Pretty sweet. All right, so let's go ahead and add in some other stuff here. I think at this point I'm fairly happy about, you know, majority of these details. Oh, look at that. I actually drew on the wrong layer. That's awesome. but I'm actually fairly content with a lot of the details that we put in here so far. So let me just go ahead and separate this out. Make sure it's on that same. So this is all on the same drawing layer. Good thing we saved out a copy here. So definitely want to make sure that we have a saved copy of this, so that way we don't lose our drawing, because that would suck, right? However, I'm still going to keep this underlay here just to kind of remind us of some of the things like the gas station and all that stuff here. The gas pumps and everything that we've kind of identified. Alright, so to continue on with this, I'm going to go ahead and put in some of these poles. Like, look at that. It's like a big piece of log. It's pretty insane. So let's go ahead and stick that in. And actually, you know what? This is probably going to go through. And we can even reinforce it by adding in just a little bit of design detail here, that it's being reinforced or held. Okay, we got barrels and stuff that we can add in for trash can or more decorative purposes. But again, this is just something that I'm just gonna put in here, and we're gonna do a final pass where we actually fill this up with a lot more detail, because, you know, details are actually really fun. But we definitely don't want to get too consumed by all the details and forget about the larger design elements here. And another thing is, like, you know, there's all these like planks of wood there's an opportunity for, so I'm gonna go ahead and actually put in some of that detail. Just make sure the spacing makes sense. What I don't want to do is I don't want to get too even. It's gonna go in perspective. So as it goes way further back here, it's going to compress, meaning the lines are going to get more compressed together to show off that it is going in perspective, right? Because it's going away from us. So a lot of these lines are going to get compressed. So it's going to give us kind of that visual aid of like, okay, that's these things are further away. And the reason why I drew on a completely brand new layer is just so that, you know, I can easily edit and erase out some of these lines, especially the stuff that's on here, like on the poles and stuff. We're gonna go ahead and do that to this here. And again, some of this stuff here, I can just kind of freehand it and just kind of indicate just only where we need those details. There's so much cool stuff. I'm looking at wheelbarrows and just all this neat stuff going on. Again, just gonna take it one step at a time. Add in some of those details here. Now, whether we choose to follow this all the way down is up to us, because this is kind of like it is like a wall detail. So we can choose to go all the way down, or even like add in some sort of like wall molding. It's not necessarily a crown molding, which is basically, it's just like an architectural detail, but it's where you have like a piece of wood or a piece of frame that goes up along the walls of this. I know it sounds super boring. You guys are like, what? Why are we talking about this? However, this is stuff to, you know, keep in mind. You know, this is all part of the design process. You know, we're trying to figure out the best way to really deck this out and make it look very interesting. Maybe we'll add in another window here. Feels a little empty. I just realized I forgot to add in the windows on these guys too. I always like to add in kind of all the major horizontal bits here, just so that it's all in perspective, and then add in all the verticals. Let's make this a little higher. Some of the most impressive design layout drawings that I've seen is when it's like architecturally like really accurate, and mainly because it's such a pain in the ass to do, and that's kind of the reason why it's really challenging, is because you almost can't bullshit it. You know, it has to be relatively accurate, but it definitely pays off. You know, when you have a really nice drawing, a really nice design, and everything just comes together very, very, very well. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. All right, now I think we're ready for our gas pump. So let's just go ahead and save this out just in case. And I'm just gonna create a duplicate just in case we feel kind of a little nervous here. But I'm gonna go ahead and add in kind of like this wooden plank kind of thing. Kind of this little stance here that I'm looking at down here, because that's kind of what they would have, right? They'd have kind of this overall wooden plank-like structure that would hold up this stuff. Okay, probably look something like that. Something like that. Okay, and I'm actually gonna go ahead and add these little poles here. But again, these things are probably gonna be like larger stumps. And instead of us saying like, well, the car is gonna hit this thing, it's like, no, maybe this is just a pole for the horses to kind of get mounted, or to get kind of leashed on. Okay, we got kind of this gas station bit thing here that I'm seeing from our drawing, and you can see that totally destroying our drawing right here, right? And it's scary. We're like, no, but I do have a backup here, so I'm not too worried. But I definitely want to take the opportunity to really just kind of see what's behind it and reveal it, you know. And also we have this large wooden structure here, so let's go ahead and draw that out. Maybe just some extra support up here. Just to kind of give it a little bit more dimension. This thing. Again, like signs and details, we're going to wait till the end. Oh, I totally forgot. What if there was like little stairs here? That'd be really cool. Just to kind of add in that, like, I mean, I think this is what makes things feel Western, is a little stair, right? Kind of having this little stair step, even though it's not like entirely needed, but this is something that would be really cool. So just gonna go ahead and continue to draw the stair out here. And I think it'd be cool if we just had a little bit of indication of like height of some sort. You know, if this is the ground, then maybe this thing actually, this deck is up a little bit higher. Maybe this whole entire ground is actually up a little bit higher. You know, just by like a foot or so. And realistically, you know, it does make sense that they would level out the ground like this, only because, you know, a lot of foundation is never, it's never you know, straight, especially like on the ground. So they build a foundation in order to make it straight. That's what I mean by foundation. But yeah, the ground is never really straight, because, you know, there's always like bumps and rocks and stuff like that. So, you know, they always have to kind of build a flat ground surface in order to make it, you know, kind of flat. Okay. All right, now let's start working on the gas pumps. The moment of truth. Nope, just the fun part. There's always a lot of like little things that we can do, and I'm looking at like a lot of our reference here, and I think it might be cool if we utilized a barrel of some sort, which is really cool. So I always like to go and kind of look at, you know, what can we adopt, what can we use that will make this kind of a cool structure. I'm going to utilize parts of this. I think that's great. And notice how I'm like picking and pulling elements. You know, I really want to be as resourceful as I can in order to really make this thing legible, and also kind of cool at the same time. This is a really key component part of our design. So I have a light bulb, a little water container or basket thing, and then a little T section for the post. And I'm gonna go ahead and try to implement all of these elements into our pseudo kind of gas barrel thing that we have going on. So one thing that might be cool is, what if, just for kicks, I designed some sort of platform that the barrel sits on. Let's go ahead and make this thicker, actually, this post. Something like that, you know, as kind of a general start. And then maybe here I can have an indication of like some sort of little tin barrel or basket or bucket or something kind of underneath to kind of get all the extra oil that it collects over time. But more importantly, this is where our main little gas station is going to reside. It's going to be, thinking of this kind of like large barrel. We'll have like 2 or something. Go ahead and check that out. There's like these little kind of like I guess metal straps that go around it. To kind of keep generally things braced together, right? See, there seems to be like another additional metal strap or something here. All right, cool. It's going to indicate kind of the wood paneling of the barrel. And also just kind of, I'm going to build around this thing. Like as if this is kind of like a little stand. And this stand actually funnels out, like maybe we kind of have like the gas pump or something up here. I'm thinking like, you know, do we need another barrel here? I mean it might be really cool. However, maybe we can do something else to kind of mix it up. Because having 2 barrels might be a little overkill, but maybe we can add something where it's like it's more of like less of like a pump or some sort that's connected. Kind of those well pumps, So I'm gonna go ahead and check that out, like what it looks like, a traditional water pump. Traditional water pump. Pump. Okay, so it kind of looks like this like nozzle. This is actually really neat. And a lot of times, you know, when I'm designing, if I don't know what something looks like, the best thing that we can do, guys, is honestly just pull a little bit of reference, kind of see what we can do to really get as close as we can to the design. So this is actually not that far off from what I remembered. Kind of has this little bit here, and there's a little coil thing. Just gonna go ahead and connect it, and then the nozzle since I have like the cord going up here, maybe it's hanging or something. Maybe it's coming down here, looping around. Something like that. I think it might be pretty cool. And maybe this thing is our actual little gas thing. Now, whether we have gas vehicles in this time period, which we don't, you know, the concept of still having a Western style gas station is actually really neat. Because again, we have to reimagine all of the existing modern pieces and see how it fits, you know, and we have to somehow jerry rig everything in order to try to kind of fit into this world, in order to make some sense of it. So maybe it needs a little bit of a little handle here, something like that. It's kind of fun. Okay. Another thing that's actually really neat is, I totally forgot, but you know, adding little light poles like this is really cool. I'm just gonna go ahead and pull this right here, and even have this element right here maybe. Now, typically when I'm painting, I do this very often, where I actually take the existing photograph or photo reference, and I will literally plug it in to see if it looks right, and I'll even as goes to copying the actual image, like plugging it in here, you know, because the design wise, I'm not gonna redesign this thing. I'm just gonna draw it in, and compose it into our scene. And the most important thing is trying to compose it and making sure that it feels appropriate. You know, as we do something like that, see how it looks. That's actually pretty cool. It's definitely, you know, I can definitely buy that. That's actually a really neat placement for something like this. Okay, let's go ahead and continue on here. All right, so there's a lot of this empty stuff here, and I'm not too worried. I think it's not too bad. I'm definitely gonna go ahead and put some wooden plaques here. And again, I created a new layer, but again, if you're drawing traditionally, just go ahead and you're going to be drawing this out on paper. I guess that's like one thing that I definitely like about, you know, Photoshop is the ability to edit. Because, you know, in drawing, in actual traditional drawing, it's so hard to edit. It's incredibly hard to edit down, you know, any mistakes or anything that you wanna take out. You have to plan everything out. You know, as we're in Photoshop, you can actually stretch, you know, pull, erase, and then you can just kind of recompose the shot, and it'll still look somewhat, you know, decent. Now I have all the stuff that was kind of left behind. I'm gonna go ahead and kind of bring this back. So I'm gonna duplicate it and create a little area for my mask, and I'm just gonna reveal or bring some of this back here, just in the areas where we lost that stuff. Just gonna go ahead and bring that stuff back. Especially in the areas where I erased it, you know. And compress these so it still stays as one whole drawing. And there you go. Now with line weight, I'm gonna wait for that till the end because I don't want to get too caught up with the line weight just yet. I just kind of want to enjoy the designing aspect and the drawing aspect of it all. So I'm just gonna continue to design here. I'll put a little bit of detail on this sign, maybe just a little bracket or something that kind of goes on top. Since this sign is a lot shorter than the one on the side, I'm only going to have 2 of these. So this one can say Texaco, Texaco, Texaco Gas, and Texaco or something. But I'm just going to have 2 of them for now. And these wooden posts, let's go ahead and add these guys. So if anyone has ever checked out the previous design tutorial on this, basically we took an existing object and we actually redesigned it. And so this is, if you guys have questions in regards to what I'm doing right now, I highly recommend checking out that other tutorial from the previous term. I believe it's term 9. You can go ahead and check that out on our Foundation Patreon Gumroad site. Or if not, go ahead and email and we'll send you guys a direct link for where you can find additional information on stuff like this. Okay. Just bring our older drawing over. Just kind of want to compare and contrast the two, see how they look. Oh, where are you? Oh, here we go. Okay, so it's getting there. This obviously has a lot more detail only because we're spending that much more time on it, but it's getting pretty close. Add in the post in the back and just another post up here that's going through. Start adding in little signs, but still, for the most part, I'm still focusing on the structure. So, all right, let's go ahead and start getting into this. So we're about from start to finish, I want to say we're about close to about an hour in on this sketch here. And again, as I mentioned before, I don't want you guys to rush the homework assignment. try to do this within, your comfort of time. I highly not recommend rushing this, because this is a very crucial part of learning. And if you make mistakes, it's fine. All we're gonna do here is just know exactly what to do next time. Okay. Especially when it comes to like designing, you want that trial and error period, and this is what's actually very useful for that. Is we're all learning here to figure out exactly what works and what doesn't work. And I definitely know that rushing it is only going to allow me to make more mistakes. So I'm going to take my sweet old time here. In this case, since I already have made basically designed out one of these guys, I have the option in Photoshop, and if you guys are doing this as well, to copy and paste the existing design over to basically get use out of the other one that we drew. Now, traditionally, you'd have to draw both, right? But again, the advantages of Photoshop allow us to use the image in multiple ways. So I'm just gonna, just for time crunch reasons, I'm gonna go ahead and just do that. I'm gonna grab this piece here, most of this element, and I'm gonna try to plug it into our other side here. And I want to keep in mind the general perspective. Now it is converging, so the top is going to hit roughly around that height, and definitely it's going to show a little bit more of this side since it's converging. I'm going to just erase out any of these other bits. Let's go ahead and just erase all this over. Now I'm going to go ahead and just draw this over again. Let's see here. Let's keep a copy so I can just remember what it looks like. It's funny, sometimes I'm like, I forget my own design. I'm like, what did I draw there? I rely so much on just reference, Only reason why I rely heavily on reference is because, one, especially when I'm designing for a job, I don't necessarily like guessing my way through. I need to have a precise plan. That way, when you're actually doing the job, you know exactly what to watch out for. Especially if you're on someone else's dime for like a company or whatnot, So those are all things that I try to take into account. Okay, cool. All right, sweet. Starting to have a little gas station here. It's looking awesome. It's like the most bizarre looking thing. A Western style gas station that would exist in the West, which makes no sense because they didn't have cars back then. However, this is a totally fictional world, and we're gonna do whatever we think is cool. And sometimes when you work on projects, there's just ridiculous requests. Okay, this is the height of that. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and draw let's do that. And then maybe we can add a little bit of text here. Some like, I don't know if this is really necessarily Western font, but I definitely want to see what it would look like. Let's actually go ahead and write Texaco using our font here. Texaco. Okay, so if I have something like this, I'm imagining a Western font would look maybe something like that, or I don't know. Maybe we just kind of go through and see what fits. And you guys probably have a better idea for this. Let's see here. Something that has like little edges, like even that. That's very Western. That might work actually. It seems a little boring, but you know what? It definitely serves its purpose, and I think it'll work fairly well. So we're gonna go ahead and just trace this, because again, drawing fonts by hand is a pain. I'm gonna trace this, and then we're gonna stretch it over. And that way we have kind of like a pseudo hand-drawn or handwritten font of Texaco. Drawing curves is probably the hardest thing on Photoshop. And I'm avoiding trying to make a selection out of the text itself, only because it looks really, like, it looks too perfect, and I kind of want to avoid that. And I know there's like a star. Let's go ahead and look up the Texaco star. That's kind of cool. All right, let's try my best to copy this here. All right, we got star. We got the circle. And again, I kind of want that slightly sloppy hand-drawn look. And again, the font of our T is most likely going to be a little bit more westernized. Just give it a slight little graphic here. Alright, there you have it. Texaco. Stretch this and put this in here. We'll put it in perspective. Alright, there we have it, man. Our own legitimate Texaco logo. That's pretty cool. Okay, let's go ahead and put this here. Just be mindful of your image compressing. It will want to stretch and get really low resolution the more we do this. So just keep in mind that will happen. The more you open it up, the more you compress it and kind of fuss with the image and resize it, it will lose its quality. Okay, I'm just duplicating the layers here just to kind of thicken the line weight, and we will do that at the very end for the entire drawing, but just want to do that for the type first. Okay, got the buckets. Now we got this drawing. All right, now let's go in there and really just deck it out with some detail. There's like little random things like chairs and stuff. I mean, what the hell? What's going on here? This is pretty interesting. There's like wagon wheels. There's all this weird stuff going on, right? So I'm gonna use this as a way to kind of think about and also just kind of plan for like, what else do I need? What else are we missing here? And so this is just a visual indicator of, okay, I definitely think I can use some more details. So I'm gonna add a box, right? And there might be rattlesnakes or something in there, but I definitely think a box might serve for the set dressing aspect of giving it that, you know, that definitely that Western feel. Okay, we'll do that, and then we'll add another one of these little horse things. Yeah, a little barrel back here. I realize this chair is completely out of perspective. Awesome. It's nothing better than demoing and finding out that I'm lacking my own fundamental rules. See, this is what happens when you rush. You start missing all these little things. I'm like, damn it. Okay, let's add in some more chairs. Even these little lights here are really cool. These little lamps are quite neat. And I'm getting these little lamps from here. Little details. Now again, it's optional. It's up to you guys if you want to paint this up, but again, for me, this is just more of a design exercise, and I just want to use the time here to really focus on, you know, just designing the space out. This might be a really good area to have like chairs and stuff and tables. And guys, try to spend some time here at this phase. I know for me, like it looks like I'm going super fast. It's partially because I don't want to drag this demo on any longer. But you know, it's a really good time to kind of slow down and just kind of get lost in your own designs. Like in the sense that, like, you know, there's so much stuff that you can add in. A lot of really cool details and things. you know, just to really kind of build this world out. And that sounds kind of like very theory based, but you know, it really helps to kind of develop, you know, your own, kind of helps to develop the world a little bit when you want to just kind of explore and just kind of imagine the space, you know, and what they would be doing and how they would live. Play some cards or something here. Again, there's probably like another little horse stall. I'm gonna go ahead and just add a little bit of ground texture. You know, there's like a lot of dirt and stuff around here, so you can just imagine just all that stuff kind of building up. And also just kind of like, you know, just show a little bit of driving pattern here. Like they bring in their wagons or their horses through. And it, you know, like adding in all these little details helps loosen up the drawing a little bit too. So it's not like so stiff. It's a little bit more, it's a bit more illustrated, you know? Because again, we are doing a drawing after all. It doesn't have to be this like medical, like super blueprinty kind of engineering drawing, you know? You can still have a little bit of gesture and fun with it. All right, there you go. We have our Western themed gas station. How badass is that? That's so weird. I've never seen anything like that. Okay, so there's a couple of things about line work or line weight. What I like to do is there's a lot of things that are getting lost here because we're drawing with one line weight. So I like to duplicate this layer here. And for those of you who are doing this traditionally, first thing I like to always think about is beefing or thickening up the outer silhouette. So all of my outer lines I'm gonna definitely emphasize. So all this stuff here for the most part. The reason why I like to emphasize that is because it helps kind of give it a nice visual pop. And secondly, I like to really emphasize kind of the focal point, which is this little pump here. I'm going to definitely pop out. And just some other areas here. And I know, again, this is something that is being done digitally. So this is more of a, I guess, an artificial way of thickening your line weight. Okay? And you can kind of see how it helps emphasize all that stuff. So give this a shot, guys. I'm really excited to see what you produce for this week. And I'd like to thank you guys for watching. And here you go, just to kind of show you guys what we did before and after. With all the call outs and stuff. But yeah, I'd like to thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you in the next design session. Have a good day.
Okay guys, so it looks like that's going to go ahead and wrap up the lecture and demo for this term. And now on to the assignment. We'd like you guys to go ahead and tackle the Western theme, still trying to keep it in the same theme, but we'd like you guys to go ahead and select a different building type of your choice. So instead of a gas station, you know, it can be a shop, a hotel, an inn, you know, just anything that you want to do, but we'd like to keep it some type of building in the Western theme. And just looking for at least one solid design. The more the merrier, but that's going to be the minimum. Looking forward to your guys' submissions. Thanks, everyone.